Welcome to Taiwan Report News Brief, news, analysis, and context from Taichung, Taiwan. I'm Donovan Smith. All right, up today in the program, the EPA is looking to help with the garbage crisis. And for the rest of the show, we're going to go into the results of the Kaohsiung byelection and why it was bad news for the DPP, even worse news for the KMT, and no good, terrible news for the TPP. But up first, headlines. An EVA Airways sightseeing flight focusing on the experience of flight that remains restricted due to the pandemic impressed passengers on Saturday as the pilot used the flight path to draw a contrail thumbs-up icon in the sky. The Airbus A330 jetliner, decorated with the popular Hello Kitty, recorded the flight path to pay respect to health practitioners amid the pandemic, according to the airline. The number of Hong Kong residents awarded residency in Taiwan during the first 6 months of this year totaled 3,161, up 116% from the same period of 2019, according to the latest immigration statistics. At 9:04 a.m. on Friday morning, aircraft spotter Gulf 9 on Twitter reported a U.S. Navy Lockheed EP-3E Ares II electronic warfare and a reconnaissance aircraft appearing to fly over northern Taiwan. Gulf 9 pointed out that it is extremely rare for a U.S. military aircraft to fly directly over Taiwan. Less than an hour later, Beijing-based think tank the Peking University Institute of Ocean Researchers SCS Probing Initiative also reported on Twitter that the EP-3E had entered Taiwan's airspace. The think tank speculated that it could either be an intentional operation or a signal error. When the tracking sites picked up U.S., Chinese, or Taiwanese military aircraft, resulting in, quote, some chaos. The Environmental Protection Administration has announced that it is exploring more diverse methods of refuse disposal, such as establishing 5 biofuel-fired power generators by 2024. Last year, the nation produced 9.31 million tons of trash, including items not yet sorted for recycling, with 900,000 tons, or 31%, of trash sent to incinerators, EPA statistics showed. If a way could be found to prevent the 900,000 tons from being sent to the incinerators, it would greatly extend the life of the incinerators. Now, that is important as both Taichung and Nantou are facing a crisis later this year, as multiple Taichung incinerators will be taken offline at the end of their service life and refurbished. Nantou is already in crisis, but Taichung will no longer be able to help take up the slack until later next year. Both Nantou and Changhua have tried to get new incinerators built, but not in my backyard protests from locals continually derail these plans. Taichung currently has a biofuel plant, and the EPA plans to build biofuel plants in Taipei, New Taipei City, Taoyuan, and Kaohsiung. Though they don't produce a huge amount of power, all 5 would only power about 11,000 homes, but they don't release the pollutants that incinerators do. So far, there has been no public backlash to them being built. According to the EPA, they would also reduce carbon emissions by 22,200 tons per year. The Kaohsiung mayoral by-election results are in, and the news for all 3 parties was bad. But before I go into that, let's look at the results. To the surprise of absolutely no one, Chen Chi-mai of the DPP won by a large margin. Chen got 671,804 votes, or 70.03% of the total. Jane Lee, or Li Meizhen of the KMT, came in second with 248,478 votes for 25.9% of the total. Jean Wu, or Wu Yizheng, got only 38,960 votes and 4.06% of the vote. According to the Central Election Commission, the percentage of votes garnered by Chen was the highest in Kaohsiung's mayoral election history, beating former DPP Mayor Chen Zhu's 68.08% in the 2014 race. Among the 38 electoral districts in Kaohsiung, Chen scored an overwhelming victory against the KMT in 35 districts, including several in which the KMT used to have a strong foothold. Voter turnout stood at 41.83%. At his victory rally, Chen said pretty much what you'd expect, but stated, quote, "I will maximize the DPP's political value to build a clean government and move the city forward." But he also promised to reorganize the Kaohsiung government to include all talent, regardless of their political affiliations. He also outlined 4 priorities: upgrade the city's industries, add new jobs, improve transportation infrastructure, and ensure cleaner air. He thanked his rivals in the race, and they congratulated him on his win. KMT Chair Johnny Chang said, quote, "Today's election results should not be seen as a rejection by Kaohsiung citizens of the KMT, but as urging us to work harder. We will take action to win back the support of Kaohsiung citizens and win back Kaohsiung in the 2022 local government elections," he said. Okay, so from everything I told you, most people would think this is a massive victory for Chen Chi-mai and the DPP. A record 70% for the winner. They destroyed the KMT even in their many strongholds. Now, how could this be seen as anything other than an overwhelming success for the DPP? Well, not so fast. Going into this election, the DPP made it clear they were hoping to match the nearly 940,000 votes to oust Han Kuo-yu in the June recall vote. However, they got just over 670,000, or 270,000 short of their goal. That's a huge shortfall. And it gets worse. That's over 70,000 less people than voted for him when he lost in 2018, and over 320,000 less than voted for their candidate Chen Ju in 2014. And he had the advantage of running in a traditional DPP stronghold with the momentum coming off of the recall. In short, voters simply aren't very enthusiastic about him. True, some voters may not have come out because of voter fatigue after 2 elections this year already, and because the result was already pretty obvious. But the gap in the number of people voting for him in those past examples is still quite striking. More than anything, he benefited from a complete collapse in support for the other candidates, not because of any excitement about him. The DPP could have run a sock puppet and would have won, and it probably would have been more charismatic. This is not good news for Chen's future electoral prospects, which in theory, in the somewhat distant future, could include the presidency by using the Kaohsiung mayorship as a launchpad. In spite of, by all accounts, Chen being smart, highly competent, and very knowledgeable, he's simply not a big hit with voters. On the plus side for Chen and the DPP, however, is that they have won and now have a chance to show Chen's skills as a mayor and prove to voters that he's the right person for the job, even if he's not terribly charismatic. If they're successful at that between now and 2022, they may be able to turn him into a strong electoral asset. He's got his work cut out for him, though. While the news wasn't great for the DPP, at least they have the consolation of having won. The news for the KMT, Jane Lee, Johnny Chang, and Han Kuo-yu, however, was disastrously bad straight across the board. They scored the lowest ever for a KMT mayoral candidate at 26% in Kaohsiung, and even worse than the 31% in the disastrous 2014 race. She also got more than 200,000 less votes than the KMT did in that 2014 race, and nearly 650,000 less votes than Han got in 2018. Voters abandoned her and the KMT in droves. For both the party and for Jane Lee, this election should have been an opportunity to create a nationally recognized younger generation political star, win or lose. Her faked thesis scandal and disastrous electoral result, however, have dashed those hopes. For former Mayor Han and any potential hopes of running for KMT chair next May, this is also a big blow. He came out in the end hoping to rev up his Han army base to at least give Lee a respectable showing. That base didn't rev, and her showing wasn't even close to respectable. This suggests he may have lost all but the hardest core of his base, mostly the thousands who showed up at that final rally. He'll definitely be returning to his home in Yunlin County with his tail between his legs. For KMT Chairman Johnny Chang, this is yet another blow in a series of disasters. This is a loss of historic proportions and follows on the historic ouster of their man Han in June. His reform plans, much needed by the KMT, have been attacked by almost all of the party elites. Now he's under pressure to resign, and one person I saw interviewed on TV today said there's a movement to push forward a proposal during the party Congress in September to change the election date for the party chair. In short, to oust him. It's highly unlikely he has much clout left in the party, and he started out with very little to begin with. To salvage his chairmanship and get his reforms passed, he's got his work cut out for him. Meanwhile, on the Taiwan People's Party front, the news was also terrible. With their party caucus the only one untouched by the recent bribery scandal, there was some hope they could, if not win, at least make a respectable dent in the polls. After all, there's a chunk of the population fed up with both of the major parties, and with the thesis scandal imploding the KMT campaign, and some polls showing their candidate trailing the KMT by single digits, it was reasonable for them to hope for a respectable double-digit result. Nope, the voters weren't interested. Their candidate clearly failed to inspire, and is continuing to hold pan-blue KMT allied People's First Party membership, didn't manage to draw off the hundreds of thousands that abandoned the KMT in this election. This suggests, though doesn't prove, some interesting things. First, it suggests that the pan-blue camp's popularity has really collapsed across the board. It isn't just Jane Lee that has this problem. She, after all, only got 26%, while in January, Han scored about 35% in Kaohsiung while running for president. Party ID polling has shown the KMT has continued to slide since January, and this election seems to confirm that on the ground. It also suggests that the recent pattern of poaching pan-blue politicians into the TPP isn't working with voters either. While this is only one test case, it may mean the TPP needs to recalibrate their strategy. The result also shows that their chairman, Taipei Mayor Ko Wen-je, campaigning in Kaohsiung, didn't seem to help one bit. One would expect a local city councilor, which their candidate was, to get at least the 4% that he did simply from the constituents in the district that elected him. Well, it's been pretty obvious for a while now. This seems to confirm that Ko's star has fallen pretty hard. It looks like for him and the TPP, they've also got their work cut out for them. Be sure to support us on Patreon. Your support is key to us keeping up the many hours of work that go into each and every show. Be sure to hit like and subscribe and all that fun stuff so you can stay up on the latest shows. And check us out on report.tw for more.
This has been brought to you by the Taiwan Report. For more content like this, become our patron at report.tw.
哎呦，就是那个台湾狗啦，最喜欢我的台湾狗了。